Hello, I'm Chen, and we're presenting our pictorial entitled Probing Documentation Practices, Reflecting on Students' Conceptions, Values, and Experiences with Documentation and Creative Inquiry. We deployed a remote design probe to 15 students in maker-based learning to examine the ways students practice and value process documentation. In this presentation, we'll share a summary of our approach and our key findings. Documentation tools play a key role in project-based learning by making learners' thinking visible and by revealing process and accomplishments. This is especially true in creative learning environments such as makerspaces in design, architecture, and art studios. Within these creative learning environments, the role of documentation is usually cast in two ways: as evidence of learning for assessment or as part of a reflective practice. There is considerable prior work into developing mediating technologies and learning communities around creative documentation. Yet, despite the importance of documenting work, student perceptions, values, and practices of documentation in creative fields are understudied. Transitioning to remote learning due to the pandemic provided an opportune moment to reflect on documentation and its relationship to space, tools, and materials. We opted for a design probe as a generative research method that suited to collecting rich experiential data where in situ observation or direct inquiry is difficult. This was organized as a series of 4 activities, 1 per day for 1 week. First, participants were asked to take a photo of their workspace, and then they annotated it for creative adaptations. Then we had the mind mapping activity, which asked participants to diagram what documentation meant to them. Then we had the project journey map, which charted frictions of documenting one's recent project. And then finally, we asked participants to list and rate why they document their work. On the final day of the probe, participants were invited to a one-on-one 30-minute interview to share and discuss their outcomes. For the method of deployment, 15 undergrad students completed the probe. They were from 2 interdisciplinary programs at Carnegie Mellon University focused on project-based learning and creative inquiry. All participants were engaged in remote learning courses at the time of the study, which was conducted at the end of the fall 2020 academic semester. We organized the results of the probe activity so that each probe could be compared across and within participants. We inductively coded the responses and synthesized our insights. Now I'll hand it over to Miso, who will share a summary of some of the insights and findings.
We asked participants to complete mind maps in response to the prompt, "What does documentation mean to you?" We use this to see how students structure their conceptual understanding of documentation as a domain of knowledge, skills, and practices. Despite the conceptual variations portrayed in these maps, we also observed some areas of overlap. For example, we see terms such as proof, accountability, assessment, and evidence of effort. This language suggests that documentation may have a potential sense of oversight by peers, teammates, instructors, and even by oneself. In another activity, we asked participants to list as many reasons as they can think of as to why they practice documentation. Participants then prioritized each reason on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being the most valuable. From this, we determined 5 main reasons for documenting that were shared and valued across participants. Documentation as proof or evidence, the ability to support multiple forms of communication, coordinating with collaborative teams, sharing progress with others, and presenting ideas for feedback. Together, the probe activities and the interviews allowed us to uncover the shared experiences and commonalities found in students' creative practices. These commonalities seem to form a shared lingua franca that students use to communicate challenges and which we have characterized as sprawl, meta-level making, and the cartographer's dilemma. This is discussed in more detail in our pictorial. The artifacts generated using the probe help make visible practices and values, as well as generate new interpretations of students' individual practices of creative inquiry. Because of this, we believe that the probe package itself offers a rich resource for students to reflect on and better understand a complex, diffuse practice. In future work, we intend to investigate this further by introducing the probe as an instructional tool within project-based curricula. In summary of our work, we have deployed a documentation probe to 15 students and have illustrated how they have been navigating documentation practices as they learn and work in new remote settings. Despite different disciplinary standards, we also found students share common values in how documentation connects with deeper learning processes. More details are offered in the pictorial, which we invite you to read. Thank you.